Good afternoon. Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We thank you for your letters, questions, and communications. We appreciate receiving today. Today, our presenter is Kateryna Petryna, who is a senior social protection specialist at the World Bank. She has over 20 years of experience in analytical work and operations on social safety networks, social services, pensions, and other areas. Kateryna led the bank operations in Ukraine, Croatia, Moldova, Slovak Republic, Kazakhstan, and Russia. She currently works in Ukraine, Belarus, Baltic countries, and leads the Ukraine Social Safety Nets Modernization project, implemented by the Ministry of Social Policy in Ukraine. The key objective of this project is to improve the performance of Ukraine's social assistance and social services for low-income families. Kateryna also leads the community-based social service delivery project financed by the grant from the government of Japan, provided to Ukraine by the World Bank through the Japan Social Development Fund. This project, which is being implemented in 28 territorial communities of Ternopil and Odesa oblasts, is focused on improving access of the vulnerable groups to social services. Kateryna holds a PhD in physics and mathematics and an MBA in banking. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, Kateryna Petryna is going to be not able to be with us, and therefore her assistant, Anna Baranova, is going to be presenting her talk. Thank you for your attention. Over to you, Anna Baranova.
Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen.
We see your screen, Anna.
Thank you. So today I'm going to deliver a presentation on the World Bank lending support to the poor households in Ukraine during COVID pandemic. So the name of the project is Social Safety Net Modernization Project. The total amount of the project is 300 million. And this is the biggest World Bank lending operation in the Eastern Europe and Central Asia for the moment. The project was approved by the board of executive directors of the World Bank in 2014. And the main objective of the project is to improve the performance of the social assistance and social services systems for low-income families in Ukraine. The Social Safety Net Modernization Project was the first World Bank operation in Ukraine that used the new lending instrument, meaning combined traditional investment financing with the disbursement that are triggered by achievement of agreed specific results. They are called performance-based conditions, or PBCs. The project has two components. One component is linked to achievement of these performance-based conditions, and it's $200 million. And traditional investment component where loan proceeds are used to finance supply of goods and services. which I envisaged under the project. So in April of 2020, the Board of Executive Directors of the bank approved additional financing in the amount of $150 million for this project. This instrument was used, additional financing is the instrument that was used to improve the efficiency and targeting of the state support to the poor and vulnerable through the expansion of the guaranteed minimum income program to the poor and downscaling the housing and utility subsidy program for the non-poor. And one more objective of this additional financing was promoting the introduction of the complementary social and activation services for the low-income citizens to help them escape from the poverty trap. During the preparation of this additional financing, the outbreak of COVID pandemic started posing a large negative impact on the poor and vulnerable citizens in Ukraine. So this additional project, we call them additional financings, was used to support the government in their efforts to provide additional assistance to those households that were impacted by the pandemic, and to help in this way these vulnerable groups. This project also had the second additional financing. So the structure of the financing is: we have parent project, social safety net modernization system, and we have like two additional projects, two additional financings. So I have already told you about the first one, and we also had the second one. It was approved in December of 2020 to prevent the escalation of poverty in the short and long term. This second additional financing introduced some measures. It supported the measures aimed to increase to increase the income eligibility threshold for the GMI program in 2020, and to extend its coverage to those who are newly poor because of the pandemic. The project also supported temporary child benefits to the self-employed and vulnerable business, and for small businessmen, let's say. And it also relaxed eligibility rules for unemployment benefits for those newly unemployed because of the pandemic and the lockdown.
Can I just interrupt, Anna? I am back.
Oh.
I'm Katya, Kateryna Petryna. I'm very sorry for my computer. I mean, it crashed when I joined the meeting.
Yes.
So I can continue.
Please do. Very nice that you were able to fix your problem. Thank you.
It was not me. It seems to me it's some ghosts that decided to
well,
let
since
Anna
I do not believe in ghosts, let's continue. I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah. Okay. So as Anna said, this is the biggest operation in ECA region in Eastern Europe and Central Asia region of the World Bank in social protection. And we are giving a very brief background for the project. I mean, how it evolved during the almost 7 years. So the project started in 2014 after the Revolution of Dignity. So we supported the government with this operation. And then later on, when I will tell you what slide to show, I'm just talking and will continue where Anna stopped. So it has 2 additional financing in the amount of $450 million to already a big project with $300 million. So altogether, and this is slide number 6. Next slide. Yeah. So the latest additional financing that we provided Ukraine with was at the end of 2020. And this was the emergency support during the COVID pandemic to support the very ambitious and I would say generous government program during the pandemic and the lockdown, to support those who lost their jobs, to support those small entrepreneurs and their children during the lockdown, and mainly to support the poor households with the so-called GMI program. This is the last resort program which measures the income of the family, and if the income is below certain level established by the government, they are getting the benefit. And this program is very well targeted, so it targeted the poor, but it was small. And the idea was to extend this program and to support the newly poor, those new poor who became poor because of the either directly because of the health issues or restricted income, or because of the economic downturn, and their income became much lower than it was before the pandemic. When we did simulations, how to support, when we did the simulations, how many of the poor will be in Ukraine due to the pandemic, we estimated that around 1.5–2 million people will become poor just due to the COVID pandemic. So this project was mainly aimed mainly to support this new poor and to prevent the poverty increase. According to our simulations, the social protection measures, those that Anna mentioned in her previous slide, where their objective were to prevent the poverty increase, which means that we will be supporting almost 1 million people from falling into the poverty. So this is a background about the project, and the next slide shows like the picture of this big operation. So now this is the biggest social protection operation in our region to support the poor during the pandemic and beyond. Next slide. I'm also giving the country context, showing that what was our estimates of the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak for Ukrainian economy. So this outbreak hit the Ukrainian economy hard. Ukraine's economy contracted by almost 7% because of this COVID. The lockdown also resulted in a sharp increase in the total number of the unemployed. The unemployment rate rose to almost 12% in 2020 from the 8% in the year before 2020. Remittances declined, and with labor incomes, employment and remittances greatly affected by the crisis, poverty was projected to increase sharply to almost 23%. And according to our estimates and simulations, 70% of the 60% of the people who may fall into poverty because of the COVID pandemic, they did not benefit from any existing social protection programs in Ukraine. So to help this newly poor, the government decided to extend the existing pro-poor so-called guaranteed minimum income program and introduce temporary benefits to the temporary poor. And we were co-financing these benefits by our operation. Next slide. I would like also to give the participants of this webinar a little bit of the sectoral context, meaning social protection sector, so sectoral context in Ukraine. Ukraine operates a very complex and extended social assistance system that distributes a large share of the GDP to the different groups, categorical. Some of them are not poor, but still they get the benefits. So actually the Ukraine spends almost 4% of the GDP on social assistance program, which is, I mean, this amount is similar to the proportion that the richer countries such as Germany or Netherlands are spending on the social assistance in their own countries. Overall spending was going up and down, and the highest amount was spent in 2017 due to the significant expansion of the assistance under the housing and utility subsidy program. This program actually delivers the discounts to the utility bills. And this big increase is well explained because during 2015 and during the 2015, 17, and even in 18, Ukraine introduced a major reform to eliminate the universal energy subsidies. The tariffs on the energy were going up. And this program was essential to support the poor during the energy reform. However, as a result, the system became lopsided as the housing and utility subsidy program became the country's largest social assistance program, reaching almost half of the country's households. And this program, I mean, this housing and utility subsidy program was not so well targeted comparing to the GMI program, to the guaranteed minimum income program. Next slide. So the idea during the pandemic was to scale down the housing and utility subsidy and to expand the guaranteed minimum income program. And our operation was aimed to support gradual expansion of the GMI program. Next slide. I mean, in this slide, I'm explaining a little bit what the GMI program is all about. So it's the last resort program where households with income below so-called guaranteed subsistence minimum, this is guaranteed by the Ukrainian government minimum income level, they are eligible to the social assistance benefit. Our operation is supposed to co-finance the benefits under this program. During 2014-2019, the project directly co-financed the expansion of this program from 200,000 families to 300,000 families, which means to over 1 million of the individuals. All the additional financing that we gave to the government of Ukraine during the pandemic are supposed to directly co-finance the further expansion of the GMI program from 300,000 families to more than 600,000 families. So expanding the coverage of the program to almost 5% of the population. Next slide. But this expansion of the program is not it's the expansion, but at the same time we are supporting a lot of the activities to, we are calling it like to graduate the poor households from the poverty. And to make them self-sufficient and leave the social assistance benefits forever, or at least for some time. So this activity is called activation of the GMI beneficiaries on the labor market. The activation started back in 2015, and by piloting this approach, by piloting the activation services for those beneficiaries that are able to work, we call them workable GMI program beneficiaries, and to promote their move from the dependency on the benefits to the self-sufficiency. The pilot was named Hand of Help. It was well received by 3 piloting oblasts, and it was operating for 3 years, and the pilot actually showed a very good results, because around 30% of the workable GMI beneficiaries were activated. So they joined the labor market. And some, because the program also contained the financial grant, they called it a financial grant, but this was actually the loan without interest that was given to those workable beneficiaries who want to establish their own business. And with the help of the public employment services, they actually successfully successfully launched their own business. And this pilot ended up in 2020, when the legislation was adopted to extend this pilot nationwide. So actually, starting from 2021, meaning this year, the workable GMI beneficiaries are activated at the labor market and can start their own business with the help of this financial support. Next slide. If you look in Ukrainian, this was a logo of the pilot, Ruka Допомоги, Hand of Help. So, and I'm giving in this slide, I'm giving the results in numbers of the Hand of Help pilot. So almost 6,000 participants were in this Hand of Help pilot. 2,000 or almost 40% were employed through the public employment services. And this was done because it was a pilot where the public employment services actually took the workable GMI participants as the priority clients. 237 participants, or around 4% of those who participated in the pilot, started their own business. And 90% of them continue their successful operation till now. I would say that many of these businesses are well shown on the Ukrainian in Ukrainian mass media. Some of them have their own name, like, for example, there was a, like, this business was not something very regular or something very ordinary. For example, several ladies started their own cheese factories in the Carpathian Mountains. Others opened the art shops because they were artists. Many of them started the hairdresser salons. So this was really successful, and maybe the main success of this hand of help pilot was the following: that actually those who started their own business, they were encouraged with the financial support to employ their workable GMI beneficiaries. So those who started their own business, they employed 90 GMI beneficiaries and internally displaced persons during the pilot. And the pilot also envisaged to repay the loan with the taxes. So those well-operated businesses, they actually repaid the loans that they took through the taxes and fees. Next slide. This is the picture of the results in each oblast. So the pilot was operating in Kharkiv, Poltava, and Lviv oblasts, and this is the result of the activation. So those who got the employment are the biggest group. Those who participated in public works are smaller group, and the business startup grants, the smaller group took this business startup grants, but they were considered as a very big success. Next slide. Another achievement of the project so far is the new models for benefits delivery. Ukraine established in 2020 the National Social Service, and so this is a state executive body that ensures implementation of the social protection policy in the regions and sub-regions during decentralization. I didn't put the slide about decentralization reform. It started a long time ago in 2014, and it includes administrative and territorial changes, but also the change in the distribution of the functions of the state. So social protection as a sector is fully decentralized. And so, in addition to the delegated functions that the local authorities are performing, they got social protection as their own function. So this function was fully delegated to the local authorities. In addition to the decentralization, these changes in the territory and administrative structure, the small villages, settlements, and towns were encouraged to create the bigger territorial communities, so-called amalgamated territorial communities. At the beginning, it was a voluntary amalgamation, meaning voluntary, they voluntarily decided with whom they want to unite. But in 2020, the final number of the amalgamated communities was established. So those who didn't decide to join anyone were actually forced to join the communities. And now Ukraine has this 1,468 communities, whom we, through the means of the project, support and provide training, computer equipment, and software to help them perform their own new function in the social protection. I mean, so the project developed application software social community, and almost all new territorial communities joined the, installed this social community software and started to take clients in their front offices, and then the decision is made at the upper level to grant them benefits. Next slide. This slide shows the process. So we supported 40 amalgamated territorial communities back in 2017 to pilot this new software, to establish the, even to provide the position of the social worker in their community, then to establish the Department for Social Services and provide support to children, families with children, and elderly. So as you can see, in the majority of these territorial communities, in 1,400, this operation is already up and going. The rest will be covered with our technical support and will join this application software, and will start client intake during 2021. Next slide. This is the map of Ukraine, where we showed how many communities we covered with the project and what is the amount of dollars that we spend on technical support for them. So this is a picture of the map, but we have the interactive program where you can show each and every map that shows each and every community and what they got from the project. Next slide. The project continued to support the management information system, the development of the management in an information system, but we are far from being done there. So I didn't put the management and information system as a project achievement, because this is something that we will try to achieve during next 3 years. However, we were able to establish the system of fraud and error control in social assistance. This is a modern system that almost all European countries are operating, and the fraud and errors in social protection are, the percentage is high. So, and the methods to catch those who are committing fraud are, they are not sophisticated. So, and the efficiency of these inspections were usually very low, meaning if you randomly select the beneficiaries and check their documents and verify their income, you will find little errors and little fraud committed. So our main goal was to provide these social inspectors with tools to effectively identify and correct benefit irregularities related to errors and also to fraud. So the project included development of the operational manuals for the social inspectors and helping them to develop the instruments for thematic inspections of 2 programs, GMI and Housing and Utility Subsidy programs. And we did this inspection, we helped to implement these inspections using several methods. One of them is called data matching. So actually the data of the beneficiaries were checked with different databases that exist in the tax authorities, in the pension fund, in the migration agency, in the border control agency, and actually found a lot of, found this method providing us with a lot of the irregularities and fraud. In addition, we have developed the so-called beneficiaries risk profiling system that is used for inspection. So, next slide. So the purpose of this new system was to develop the automated software instrument that provide a unified risk-based approach to identify those who are violating the rules in the process of either granting the benefits or receiving the benefits. So errors and fraud are done not only by the beneficiaries, but also by the social workers. And the objective of this new system was to minimize the number of the inspections of the prudent beneficiaries, to focus the inspection, like to do the in-depth inspection on the beneficiaries that are prone to the fraud, and to increase the quality of inspections, since less number of the inspected beneficiaries means that more time is allocated for the inspection of those beneficiaries that may commit the fraud. And the main goal was to increase the amount of the funds that should be returned to the state budget. But in addition to increase the amount of the funds that were not paid to the beneficiaries. Next slide. This risk profiling model was developed for the two programs, for the GMI and for the household and utility subsidy program. So the beneficiary risk profile is the package of the information and characteristics of the beneficiaries, as well as their rank related to the probability of committing fraud and error. The result of this risk profiling model was the assignment of the certain risk and rank to the beneficiary in order to classify him to the appropriate risk group, and then to transfer this information to the social inspector to conduct the real inspection. Based on these risk profiles, personal files were sorted out, and those that have the high level of committing fraud and errors were given to the social inspectors to check. Next slide. You can see the results of this risk profiling method. So almost 7,000 GMI beneficiaries were inspected, and this is only the 3% of the overall number of the beneficiaries. And the inspection showed 23% of the detection rate. So actually, we found 23% of the cases that led to recalculation of the amount, and in many cases, the termination of the benefits. With the housing and utility subsidy program, only 1% of the beneficiaries were inspected. And the detection rate was lower, it was 17% only, not only, it's a high percent, by the way, that led to the recalculation of the benefit amount or termination of the benefits. I have to say that the inspection that use the random sample of the beneficiaries usually the detection rate is 1 to 3% only, while the risk profiling method provide with a much higher detection rate. And next slide. So in this slide, I have presented the efficiency of the inspection done by different methods. So there was a random sample inspection of the GMI program with a very low detection rate. There was also the inspection done by using the data matching method, and detection rate was much higher, so 10 and 30% in 2019. And the risk-based inspection of the GMI program, the last one, actually showed an 84% detection rate. Because we were checking those who are very risky and where the inspectors should find some errors, inaccuracy, or fraud. So when we talk about 84% detection rate, it means that only 20% of those cases led to recalculation of the amount or termination of the benefit, while 64% detected the cases with discrepancies in documents, with some decisions of the social workers or commissions that didn't lead to the termination of benefit or recalculation of the benefit, but they led to the check of the documents and elimination of the inaccuracies in the documents. This system is going to, the inspections will continue. In the next year, the government is planning to conduct the inspection of the housing and utility subsidy using the data matching method. And we expect a good results of the inspection. And the main slogan of all the inspections is the following. So those who are eligible for the benefit should get it, while those who are not eligible should be eliminated from the program. And the inspection is aimed to eliminate those from the program who have no right to get the benefits.
Ms. Petryna, we have many questions, and we usually like to leave at least 20 minutes for the questions that we got. And most of them are from Ukraine. Oh, thank you. All right. Thank you very much for a very interesting and inclusive presentation. And particularly, I know from reading the questions that your last points were particularly relevant. So thank you. And Ariel, could you please go with the questions?
Yes. So I am just first, why don't we take off the presentation really quickly, if that's possible?
Ariel, can you get on and ask questions?
I'm on. I'm just asking if it's possible to take down the presentation.
Yeah, just a second, I'm trying to.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right, so the first question that we have, and thank you for a great presentation, is what other countries does this project cover and how are they selected? And is there any percentage difference between Ukraine and any other country you work with in terms of developing poor households?
Do you want me to answer like question by question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
Eric, could you please put Ms. Petryna on the screen, full screen, and eliminate Anna Baranova and myself?
Yes, when she starts talking, then she'll be on the screen.
Okay.
To be honest, I'm not very much familiar with the overall World Bank lending to all the countries. I'm much more familiar with the lending in the region where I am working, which is Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So, I mean, mainly this is the countries from the former Soviet Union and Soviet European East. Let's call it like that. I mean, they are not Soviet anymore, but this is how you can describe the region. So in our region, we are still lending and supporting those countries with certain income per capita, with income per capita below the certain level. While many of the countries in our region already joined the European Union and we are not lending. However, there is an exception during, for example, the financial crisis of 2008 or during the COVID pandemic. So we returned to lend for those countries that that have the per capita income above certain level. Still, so what I know for our region, we were lending to Moldova, we were lending to Kyrgyzstan, we were lending to Bosnia and Herzegovina, we were lending to Albania, we were lending to Kosovo, we were lending to Macedonia. It seems to me that's it. So in social protection, actually to lend for the programs, to support the government programs for the poor. The operations were, I would not say similar, but there is a similarity. So we were actually lending to support the temporary benefits during the lockdown and to support the poor during after the lockdown. When you are asking about the amount, yes, Ukraine got the highest amount, but at the same time, I think it was fortunate because we had already the big project, and giving the additional financing was the World Bank tool to help the government to protect the poor. I am not sure, for example, I mean, let's assume that this project that was approved in 2014 was not in Ukraine. I'm not sure that Ukraine will be getting such support from the World Bank during so short period of time. The reasons are very different. So it's not only the necessity. I mean, the bank is a big bureaucratic operation, a big bureaucratic organization, and our operation usually usually one operation in order to prepare from the scratch takes 1 year. So I think that the Ukrainian needs were high. We had an instrument ready to be extended and to provide additional financing through it. So we ended up with almost like highest lending operation in social protection in Ukraine because of the coincidence of these several factors. While other countries were not so lucky and they got the support either later or in a smaller amount.
Thank you. The next question is, how does the World Bank control the flow of money due to problems with corruption?
Okay. This is, I would say, the easiest answer, but the system is very strong, robust, and complicated. As I said, we had 2 streams of funds flowing to Ukraine. One is a very traditional investment, meaning that you develop the terms of reference, you put them in the bidding documents, then there is a bidding controlled by the bank. And when the company win the bid, there is a contract signed and each payment is controlled by the bank and the company is delivering goods or services and we are paying for it. So if you think about this lending, so the money are never, I mean, only a small portion of funds that is needed to pay for the goods and services delivered is in the account of the Ukrainian government. The rest is sitting in the World Bank project account. This is some sort of control that we are doing over each, me personally, and my team, over each and every contract that is delivering goods and services under the project. There is also, as I showed in my first slides, the huge amount of this project is linked to the performance-based condition. So mainly it's some sort of achievement of result. So if the government achieved the result, we give our money to the state budget for them to pay social assistance benefits. And the system of controlling the payment of the benefits is the Ukrainian system that we have assessed. And we found out that this program, this system is robust and it's delivering the benefits to those whom these benefits were intended to be provided. That's all.
Thank you. Next question is, how many households in Ukraine received financial assistance in 2021? And who chooses the households that need financial assistance?
We are relying on the Ukrainian government program that has its eligibility rules and criteria to define the poor household and to provide them with the benefit. So it's not the bank that is establishing these rules. There is a government that a long time ago, in 2005, designed together with us the program called Guaranteed Minimum Income Program that is supposed to find through its eligibility rule and income test the poor household and then calculate the benefit that this family is should be granted. So it's not us who are defining the eligibility. It's the program that we assessed as reliable to provide the benefits to the poor. I mentioned in my presentation that in 2014, there were 200,000 households identified as a poor and provided with a benefit. This number of the poor beneficiaries identified and paid with the assistance were increased to 300,000, and we expect with the extension of this program that we will reach in 2023 600,000 households, which is about 3 million people with these benefits.
Thank you. The next question, we have a lot of questions, is what prospects for development can poor households have with the support of foreign investment in the next 5 years?
Let me say the following. The poor household have no idea that the World Bank is actually lending to them the money, because we provide this money to the government who are through their own budget and their own system delivering these benefits to the poor. So I'm 100% sure if you find the family that is getting this benefit, and it's very easy to find them, and there is a register of all of them in in the Ministry of Social Policy or in the local authorities. I mean, they will provide you with the name and the address of the family that is getting their benefit. If you ask them, are you getting the benefit from the World Bank? They will say no. It's a state assistance introduced in Ukraine by the Ukrainian law that we are co-financing, meaning that we are putting our money in the state budget for the local authorities to deliver this benefit to the poor household. What they should expect for until 2023 our co-financing, but the government will honor these benefits for sure in the future, even without us. Maybe they will ask for an additional loan. I don't know, but the idea is starting from 2005, we were not lending, but the government was paying these benefits. But they stuck at certain level, and we consider that with our co-financing, the number of the households that will be covered with this program and will be supported as a poor will be higher if we put our money together with the government money and deliver benefits.
Thank you. The next question is, now that the Ukrainian media writes that in 20 years, Ukrainians will not receive pensions, what would you recommend to Ukrainians to reduce the number of low-income families?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Sorry about that. I can repeat it one more time.
Yeah.
So the person wrote, now the Ukrainian media is writing that in 20 years, Ukrainians will not receive pensions.
Okay.
What would you recommend to Ukrainians to reduce the number of low-income families?
Okay, first of all, the mass media is saying that Ukrainians in 20 years will not get the pension benefits that they are entitled today, meaning that the legislation will change to the extent that the pension benefits will be eliminated in Ukraine in 20 years. This is, it's a nonsense. This will never happen. Maybe the benefit will be low. It's already not a generous benefit. It will be even lower, but the benefit will be there for sure. Then when you are saying like the poverty that we are assessing and we are talking, it's not the poverty of the pensioner. If the pensioner is a single person, or if the household is a single pensioner household, then we are talking about only one source of income, pension. The pension, let's assume in 20 years will be low. So this pensioner, which is one person, this household, which is one person pensioner, will get the GMI benefit in order to survive. But there are many other households that are poor. And actually, if you look at the GMI beneficiaries, you will find out that the single pensioners or single pensioner household is not there at all, because they are not so poor comparing to the household with a disabled child or many children or parents with improper behavior, let's say. So actually the poor households are those households that have a much complex difficulties and conditions and income than the pensioners only. This myth about poor pensioners is really to some extent a myth. Yes, their pension benefit is lower than it maybe should be, but they are not living alone. Few of them are living alone. I was always giving the example of my mother, who was living alone and who has a minimum pension benefit. But she was never poor because she has 3 children who were supporting her. This is what I'm saying, like, you cannot assess the poverty of the household by looking at either one person income or the pensioner or the benefit of the pensioner, you have to look at this household as a like one unit with all the income, with all the living condition, with their condition, I mean, with all type of incomes that they are getting, and then assess their poverty level. So let me also say that even in the European Union, you have the similar programs that are supporting poor. So what I'm saying, like even in the countries with a much higher average per capita income, you still have families or households that fall above the poverty of this country. And the country is supporting them through different means, including benefits, but also, as I said, activation, different services that help the family overcome the poverty. So what I have to say, I mean, in short words, poverty will be in Ukraine forever. The number, I mean, this number, the percentage, the rate, the poverty rate should be lowered by different means. The social assistance benefits are lowering this poverty level. Pension benefits are also lowering it, but not as directly as the GMI program that actually find the poor and support them.
Thank you.
Ariel?
Yes, Dr.
Is there any other very important question?
We have a few other questions, but I do know that we are at the time.
I know, so you can ask one more question. And then I'm going to ask Kateryna Pavlova because she has a question.
Okay, so then I'll let Kateryna ask her question. The last question then that I have is, how does the program affect suburban families in Ukraine?
To be honest, I have no answer to this question. I mean, it affects all poor families, regardless if they are urban or rural, suburban or, I mean, all of them. If they are poor, they are eligible for the benefit. We are going to support them.
Oh, that's a very, very nice answer. Kateryna?
Yes, thank you so much for your so nice presentation, and I'm so happy that Ukraine have such a support from World Bank. But I have some very important question, I think. How does the World Bank control that benefits is going in the right direction, does not settle somewhere in corruption scheme? Do you have some mechanism to control?
Katya, the answer is in my last slides. So let me say the following. Any benefit, state-owned benefit, meaning Ukrainian benefit, or benefits in Germany, they are prone to fraud and errors and corruption. And we are, I mean, the aim of the state, meaning, let's say, the Ukrainian government, is not to cut the program, but to establish the instruments that reduce this fraud and error. And in my last two slides, I was showing the development of the methods and the social inspection that is done by the Ukrainian government, meaning, I mean, social inspectors are civil servants that are working for the Ukrainian government to check the files, to check the beneficiary cases and find these errors or fraud, and either to terminate the benefit or recalculate the benefit, and even, I mean, or find the beneficiary. So this is the instrument, and instead of just randomly selecting cases, and in this random selection, you will find very low level of fraud and errors. We developed together with the Ukrainian government this risk-based methods that provide you with like particular cases where you should look at the beneficiary, because this beneficiary has a much higher probability of committing fraud. And as you saw, there were 4 inspections of the GMI program and 2 inspections of the housing and utility subsidy program that actually cut almost 30% of the beneficiary from the benefits, because this beneficiary provided the fraudulental documentation or fraudulental income levels, and they were cut and the funds returned to the state budget. So what I'm saying, it's not the bank who should control and reduce the corruption. It's the government who need to develop their inspectors, who need to conduct the inspection and develop a good method for methods for inspectors to do a good and efficient job. And we as the bank were helping them to develop this method and keeping their hand when they were doing first inspections.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Petryna. That was a very, very inclusive and important presentation, particularly since a lot of the questions were from our students in Ukraine. So they certainly had a very, very good lesson in governance and politics and banking systems. And thank you very much, Kateryna Pavlova, for your question, and thank you, Ariel, for your hosting. So have a very, very good day and a good weekend, and thank you very, very much for participating in this webinar. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for accepting me.
Oh, pleasure. Very much pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.